It's not? Can you give me a text if you get the feed? I gotta do a couple more things. I'll call you back. Sleep wants me to go back and touch. Is that okay if I'm right here? Okay.
No, it's not part of the story either. So, I mean, it's the transition. Anyway, I can capture it.
You confirm with me if this is okay?
Yeah, that's exactly it. No,
We're taking the LRT.
because there's only right, like so everybody is so close to the cameras that everyone's already kind of back. So they can actually see the light.
You guys just preset 56.
I white balanced about 57 for now. That's how I'm probably get a secondary one. This is Sunday.
Alright. I'm just gonna use my 36 seconds.
I could never get that sound.
We usually do well.
You do what you gotta do, my friend. And
So
Yeah, that gave you an extra stop.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Two would be nice. That's better.
Can't fight this side.
Hey, resources, it's Jake one.
We should be all
Hey, you're gonna stand there all the time, are you?
double.
It's just weird because I'm seeing
Just the battery icon. That's all. It's like yours. Oh, well, normally this is plugged in, but it's not like
I know that.
Hey, Beck, how are you doing? Hey, nice to see you. How are you doing? Good. Are you just up here for the day? Right on. Yeah.
It's out here. I'm at the county
Yeah. Oh, it was good. Long day, but it was good.
I wonder if it's placed somewhere else.
How was your night?
Had a little bit of a time trying to get yeah. It's what it comes back to 6 people. Really not looking to do any press.
Resources. Well, it's easier from a computer. I feel One city.
Sound check for everyone here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Microphone test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Microphone check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thumbs up from everyone. Who's good? Who's not good? Everyone's good? Looks like everyone's good. I saw a lot of thumbs. All right. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. The shot looks nicer that way.
Yeah, no worries. I won't.
It's fairly wide, so.
MPAL. That's the brand. It's wireless receiver.
No problem. Okay, 1 second.
I mind doing one more? Stripped everything off that I could.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Microphone test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Microphone test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, no problem.
But anyways, yeah. So like the that's the comes the little USB splitter. It's the little like big huge system. But I mean, I've got screen batteries. Let's see how well this works. Just so many tables in the camera that so that's it. As well as just because of how that is, like how big it is.
So this is it's going to Jason's office live feed right now. So
They're rolling now.
I'm rolling.
Mine is 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So where's he coming
The ground.
From the sky. You're gonna land them right here.
Helicopter in.
Pop off like right.
Snowbirds.
There we go.
They're taking this line.
You're gonna talk.
Yeah, I'll be nearly done.
You could do this straight like that. Make sure I can bring that up. Gotcha.
Well, I can pick you up for some advice.
Sure. Probably not today, but yeah.
Well, 6 month contract.
What software? Software
Itself is just desktop video setup and the podcast.
Yeah, we use something called Wirecast.
No, it's they haven't switched to this yet.
Yeah, well, Wirecast can go to YouTube.
Yeah, he was.
Sure. So basically, it takes this very throw at it and you actually switch back to the software. So it's kind of
Yeah.
It's just freelance is going pretty good. So
Yeah.
but well, we're just gonna do something like that. Like software that you can add. I'm not entirely sure about. So I have to check it out. I'm not sure if it's multi. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah. And then the spot, so it's still going like that. Coaching editors should outsiders. Full math program later, but you need to step on other. So this is great apply to make it as well, later,
Start up at the bell tower.
yeah, I get it. If I last that long. Things change.
Yeah. Investment.
Do you need 150 hours? I don't think so. Yeah, it's troubling. I think what it was is she stuff I didn't want to leave the industry, but she did. So they're asking you to prove she wants to hang on or something. Where were you last night, Larry?
I was with Steven.
Where was that?
Oh, whale.
Last summer. Space.
Like, oh,
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here after an historic election yesterday with the largest voter turnout in 40 years. I'm honored that United Conservatives received a strong mandate from Albertans to get Alberta back to work, to grow our economy, create jobs, get pipelines built, and to stand up for Alberta and a fair deal in the Canadian Federation. Yesterday, over 55% of voters cast ballots for United Conservative candidates for our positive plan to get Alberta back to work. That's the highest share of popular vote for a political party in Alberta since 2001, and the second highest since 1982 in an election with the highest voter turnout, as I've said, in nearly 4 decades. We are also honored yesterday to have received the largest number of votes cast for a political party in Alberta electoral history, and to have won a strong majority. One of the messages from yesterday's result is that unity worked. When we first proposed uniting free enterprise Albertans into one big tent coalition of common sense values, a lot of people said it wouldn't work and it couldn't be done. But yesterday, the combined vote share, the vote share of the United Conservative Party was substantially higher than the combined vote share of our 2 legacy parties in the last election. It turned out that we were right all along. We were stronger together, that there was a positive synergy as we built what is now the largest provincial political party in Canada, which will form Alberta's next government. And we will be a government with a strong mandate to implement the detailed plan on which we ran. 117 pages and 375 positive ideas. Never before have we seen such a detailed blueprint for a future government presented to voters. And we can't wait to get to work in implementing that plan and getting Alberta back to work. I said last night that we wanted to thank the leaders of all other parties and all candidates who ran. And I'd like to repeat that. To put your name on the ballot, to seek the confidence of your fellow citizens is not for the faint of heart. It requires a degree of commitment and a real passion for our province. So for the candidates and volunteers of all other parties and our Premier Rachel Notley, Mr. Khan and Mr. Mendel, I'd like to reiterate my gratitude to them for their love for this province as exemplified in the past 29 days. I said last night that we will seek to be a government for all Albertans, and I mean that. Of course, not every Albertan will agree with all of our policies that we ran on or that we implement, but I can give you this commitment. We will listen, and we will seek to act in good faith. Let me send a message in particular to the people of this great city of Edmonton and region. I was pleased last night to see the election of several United Conservative future MLAs from the Edmonton and Capital region. But I wish we had elected more. And it's sad for me to see a number of really great candidates running for the Conservative Party in Edmonton who didn't make it past the finish line. But let me be clear. Edmonton will continue to be deeply important to our work in creating economic growth and jobs. Edmonton has been affected by these 4 years of economic decline and stagnation, perhaps not quite as badly as other parts of the province. But as I crisscrossed this city and the surrounding areas, I met countless Edmontonians who've been affected by the lack of pipelines, by higher taxes, who are concerned about bigger government debt, and who want a government focused on jobs, growth, and the economy. We'll be there for all Edmontonians. including for those who work in our public sector. As I've said before, we want to empower frontline public sector workers, our nurses, teachers, and others to make more decisions. We want to liberate them, I should say, from overbearing centralized bureaucracy. And we want to grow our economy so that we have the resources needed to fund high quality public services. So our government will do everything to reach out to listen, and to ensure that we represent the best interests of Edmontonians now and in the future. Earlier this afternoon, I had the honor of meeting with Her Honor the Lieutenant Governor, who invited me to form Her Majesty's next Alberta government. I accepted that invitation and indicated to Her Honor that we would seek a transition and the swearing in of a new cabinet on April the 30th. It is also my hope that we will be in a position to convene the first sitting of Alberta's next legislature in the third week of May. I can also announce that we are work has already begun in planning to implement the agenda which Albertans endorsed yesterday. So Bill number 1 in that legislature session will be the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. Bill number 2 will be the Open for Business Act. We will also pass the first installment of the job creation tax cut in that first session of the legislature, part of a plan that will create at least 55,000 new full-time private sector jobs. We will also begin implementing immediately our red tape reduction action plan to move Alberta from the most over-regulated and slowest moving economy in Canada to one of the fastest moving and freest economies in all of North America. Later this week, I will be meeting with Indigenous leaders from across Canada to deepen the commitment on which we ran to ensure that our First Nations people are real partners in prosperity, particularly in the responsible development of our resources. Today I've also already been in discussions with business leaders in Alberta and others outside of this province who are deeply interested in investing more in this province with a government that will welcome that investment, that will make us the most competitive and desirable place in Canada in which to create jobs. So I restate what I've said last night and over the last 4 weeks. For those Albertans who have been anxious about their economic future, whose incomes have been cut, who have lost their jobs, their homes, or their hope. For all of those Albertans, hope is on the way. A government that will be obsessed with job creation and economic growth, with getting a fair deal for Alberta in the Canadian Federation. We're already off to a great start, and I can't wait for the days that are yet to come, brighter days for the people of Alberta. Happy to take your questions.
Just a reminder, there is a mic to your left. We'll ask you to limit yourself to one question, one follow-up. Go ahead, Emma.
G'day.
G'day.
Peter saying won his seat. What's that mean for your government, considering he's under an RCMP investigation?
Means he won his seat. I'm not aware of any accusations against Peter, so this is a gentleman who was elected to the legislature last night.
Who's going to be in your cabinet?
Come on, you're going to throw away your second question on that, Emma?
Yeah.
I will sit down and make those decisions in the days to come, but we've got a great caucus to choose from, a very diverse team. This was the youngest team of candidates ever to run for a free enterprise party in Alberta, and the most diverse. Obviously, we'll want to make sure that there's representation from every region, including the Edmonton region, and a good mix of backgrounds. But we'll get to that in the days to come.
Hi. Why do you think the UCP didn't win many seats in Edmonton?
It's not the first time that. First, let me back up and say we certainly tried. We put a lot of effort into, first of all, recruiting and nominating great candidates here. We had a number of great local organizations. We put a lot of resources into Edmonton. And as you know, I spent much of the last week saying that we really wanted Edmonton to be included in a future government. I'm glad that there will be some Edmonton and region voices, not as many as I would like. But that's not the first time that's happened. There's been a long history of free enterprise governments with only a relatively small number of MLAs from the Edmonton region, which governments went on to elect more Edmonton MLAs in the future. So that's my goal. My goal is to lead a government that fights for the interests of all Albertans, including Edmontonians, that creates jobs and growth and opportunity in this great city. And then we hope in the next election, Edmontonians will give us a second chance by electing more MLAs. It's no secret that this is a city where there is a larger share of the population whose employment is attached to the public sector rather than the private sector. And maybe that's one of the reasons for the historic difference in voting patterns. But I think mainly it's because the number one issue in this election was jobs in the economy. And Edmonton has not been as severely affected as Calgary and other parts of the province by the economic downturn. And so I think maybe that accounts for one of the reasons why, for the different regional outcomes in this election. But we still won over 35% of the vote. We're hopeful about some of the ongoing counts with the special and non-resident advanced ballots. We're hopeful that we'll have a stronger Edmonton caucus when all of the votes are counted.
Now, Len Rhodes didn't win in Edmonton Meadows. How do you feel about that since you appointed him to run there over local candidates?
I feel badly for Len, and frankly, I think it would have been a brilliant MLA and very likely a minister in the government, a great community guy with a business turnaround background. That's why I thought it was important to offer Edmontonians somebody of his caliber to be a strong voice for this city. But I respect the decision of the voters. I know Len feels the same way. Let me just say, I'll be reaching out in the days to come to all of our candidates in this city, our local conservative organizations, to tell them that we are going to remain focused on having a strong presence in this city in the future. And we hope that Len and others can be part of that.
Hi, Premier-designate. Last night you gave an olive branch to Premier Legault. This morning he flatly said, no, we don't want any oil pipelines, but we might be open for a natural gas pipeline in Quebec. How do we go from there? Can you insert English and then in French, please?
I'll repeat what I said last night and for the last month, that Alberta is going to fight for a fair deal in the Federation. And we don't think it's reasonable for other provinces like Quebec to take our equalization money while opposing pipeline projects that can help us to pay the bills within the Federation. Having said that, I've always been clear that I want to start on a positive footing in our relationship with Premier Legault and the government of Quebec. And that's why I spoke for several minutes last night in French directly to Quebecers about how they can benefit by sharing prosperity with us through resource development and pipelines. So I hope to have a chance to sit down with the Premier Legault. We spoke by phone briefly this morning. He called to congratulate me. He thanked me for the words I offered last night in French. And I am hopeful that we can find a way to work together. I think we want to start the relationship on a positive footing, looking for common ground. I've spoken to a number of other premiers today about the same issue, who are keen to work with Premier Legault and the government of Quebec towards our shared prosperity in the resource industries. Je suis clair depuis plusieurs semaines qu'un gouvernement conservateur va lutter pour un marché juste pour l'Alberta au sein de la Fédération canadienne, que ce n'est pas acceptable aux Albertains à verser les milliards de dollars de péréquation au gouvernement du Québec pendant que ce gouvernement-là essaie à bloquer les pipelines. Alors, ce matin, j'ai parlé au Premier ministre Legault. Il m'a appelé pour me féliciter et je crois que c'est possible à développer une relation respectueuse avec lui et son gouvernement. Je veux commencer cette relation politique importante avec la bonne foi. C'est la raison pour laquelle j'ai pris plusieurs minutes de mon discours d'hier soir pour souligner l'alliance historique entre l'Alberta et le Québec. Alors, je vais dans cette relation à trouver le terre en commun, les valeurs, les intérêts communs entre nos deux sociétés, mais nous allons continuer avec notre objectif stratégique d'avoir l'appui de tous les gouvernements provinciaux pour les pipelines.
Kenny, just following up on that, I wanted to see if you just wanted to comment on the way that Mr. Legault characterized Alberta's oil. He said it was not socially acceptable to have oil, a pipeline full of Alberta oil going through Quebec. What do you think of those specific words?
I think they're unfortunate, and I disagree with the Premier. The polls in Quebec show that Quebecers prefer to buy and consume Canadian energy to foreign energy imports. Because of the Line 3 reversal, the Line 9 reversal, there is now a higher percent. Most energy in Quebec is originally sourced from Alberta, Western Canada, but they still import enormous amounts from the United States and some from OPEC countries. I want to get into Quebec to explain that to Quebecers. I think they would see no social acceptability for dictator oil that fuels conflict around the world. And that I will make the argument continually in French, going directly to Quebecers, about how I believe it is in their interests to help us get a fair price for Canadian energy to pay the bills in the Federation, including the equalization payments that Quebecers receive. But I want to have, first of all, have a chance to sit down and have a more extended conversation with Premier Legault. You don't start a relationship by shouting at one another. You start it by talking and trying to find common ground. That's my initial goal in that relationship.
During the campaign, in terms of first steps, you said that the turn off the taps legislation would be one of the first things, or if not the first thing you would do with your cabinet. Do you still intend on doing that, on bringing it into force? And if so, do you expect you'll find yourself in court?
Well, we are going to act according to the best interests of Alberta. I think the job of the Premier of Alberta is to defend our vital economic interests. And for me, that means demonstrating to the government of British Columbia and other provincial governments that we mean business. I did speak this morning with Premier Horgan, who called to congratulate me. We had a good brief initial conversation and agreed to have a longer in-person discussion, hopefully before the Council of the Federation this summer. I think Premier Horgan knows very well that we are serious about defending our vital economic interests. I've always said that it's not our intention to begin with reducing energy shipments to British Columbia, but to have the power to do so. The Horgan government called the bluff of Alberta's NDP on the turn off the taps legislation. They said publicly that they'd received assurances that the current Alberta government does not intend to use Bill 12. We're going to change that fact by proclaiming into law Bill 12 on the afternoon of April the 30th. And then I think we sit down with the government of British Columbia with greater strength and clarity about the tools that Alberta can use to defend our vital economic interests. We have a number of other possible consequences for a campaign of obstruction. Now, let me add, I do appreciate that the Horgan government has approved and encouraged the LNG Canada project, and we would like to find other ways in which we can work with them. I've always said, just like with Quebec, that I want to start by trying to find common ground. And one area of potential common ground is on LNG exports. In our platform, we've committed to doing everything we can to facilitate a second major West Coast LNG facility. That could be a $30 billion plus capital investment to create jobs in BC and to get fair prices for gas producers in Alberta. So while we will it appears that we will have a continuing disagreement with them on Trans Mountain, we will try to find areas of common ground such as on LNG.
Karen, can I get you to hang on for a second? Sorry.
Oh, it's getting chilly out.
Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Our first question comes from Rick Bell of the Calgary Sun. The line is open.
Good afternoon. When do you hope to speak to the Prime Minister, and what are you going to say to him?
I spoke to Prime Minister Trudeau this morning. He called and to offer his congratulations. We spoke for about 15 minutes, and we had a respectful conversation about a number of issues, including the need to get Canadian energy to foreign markets. I was clear about our grave concern over Bill C-69 and how it will further dampen investor confidence in Alberta's energy sector. The Prime Minister and I agreed that we will try to schedule a in-person meeting after our government is sworn in, and we both acknowledged that the timing is challenging because just shortly after a United Conservative government is sworn in, the federal Liberal government will be moving into a federal election cycle. So I've said from the beginning, Rick, that just like with BC and Quebec, we will begin with the path of diplomacy and try to find common ground. And we hope that we don't need to use more forceful measures to assert Alberta's vital economic interests. I think Mr. Trudeau knows that if we can't get coastal access for our energy, that this new government will vigorously stand up for Alberta.
Do you have a follow-up, Rick?
Yeah, yes, a quick follow-up. What is your feeling about the fact that the campaign launched by now the soon-to-be opposition, the main opposition party against your fitness to be premier, and the many questions about the UCP leadership race and candidate comments, etc., did not have any effect whatsoever, it seems, on the vote count or the seat count from last night. So what is your feeling about the fact that there was a lot of noise about the campaign against you and other such matters that don't have to do with jobs and economic guidelines, and yet it didn't affect your victory?
Well, Rick, I underscore that we won the party in Alberta history, the highest popular vote since 2001, the second highest since 1982. I think that is a mandate of historic proportions. And I think it confirms what I've been saying for 4 weeks, that there were two campaigns going on. There was the fake war in social media of issues that were frankly a distraction from the preoccupations of most ordinary Albertans who are overwhelmingly focused on jobs, the economy, pipelines, and standing up for Albertans. And some of your colleagues in the media kind of missed the real campaign that we encountered at the doors of millions of Albertans. I think by the time all of the advance and special ballots are counted, we're probably going to be at or near 1 million votes cast for United Conservative candidates. Those were positive votes for a positive vision focused on job creation and economic opportunity. So, Rick, I take yesterday's results as a confirmation that we were on the right track. I note that by the last week of the campaign, a couple of my fellow leaders were standing behind signs saying things like jobs, economy, and pipelines. I think we succeeded in defining the critical issues in this election, and I believe that was confirmed by nearly 1 million Alberta voters yesterday at the polls.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Our next question comes from Chris Barco of Calgary Herald.
I think we're going to do these inside next time, guys.
Well, Mr. Kenney, can you tell me, after your discussions with Prime Minister Trudeau, how will you get Ottawa to move as quickly as possible on approving and building the Trans Mountain pipeline project?
We did speak about that, and Prime Minister restated his commitment to proceed with the process. As you know, the federal cabinet is pursuant to the federal court decision engaged in supplementary Indigenous consultations, and I respect that has to be done correctly and take time to pass muster for any future judicial scrutiny. I shared with the Prime Minister that I had been a member of a cabinet that approved Northern Gateway with the advice of the Department of Justice, that we had discharged the federal Crown's duty to consult, and that the judiciary keeps moving the goalposts. So I understand that he has to go through that, but he did restate his commitment to go through the process. And we're going to wrap this up because it is now raining here. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.